Okay, good morning. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. This session is aptly named Be Prepared, Proactive Management of Water Resources in a Changing Time. So the first session this morning set the scene. We looked at some of the challenges and implications of climate change in the water sector. We looked at resource and policy measures and adaptive strategies. Now we'll get to take a little bit of a closer look at how we can prepare ourselves for these challenges. So we have three different perspectives this morning. First, we have a perspective on drought and drought assessments from Romania. Then we have the water supply perspective from Germany. And then we will hear from the global perspective on the topic of water storage. But before we jump in, let me briefly introduce myself. I'm a co-chair. My name is Katja Havens. I've been working for the World Bank in varying roles for almost 9 years now. And I support the Danny Water Program, and other initiatives in the region. And I also support the Global Facility for Transboundary Water Cooperation. You may have noticed that each of these sessions is co-chaired by a young water professional. So I will hand it over to Jakob to introduce himself. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm very glad that I can be here. My name is Jakub Sofor. I'm a co-chair of this session, and I'm also a co-chair of Young Water Professionals Czech Republic. I'm studying at the Czech Technical University in Prague, nuclear chemistry, and I also teaching at the Czech Technical University water safety plans. So that's the connection between me and the water. And I think that we can move for our first presentation, which will be the Mrs. Elena Daniela Gita. She has 15 years of experience in the water sector, and she has been working for the World Bank since 2019. She does the projects related to the drought risk assessment, which we will see in one moment, and she holds a master's degree in hydropower and technical hydraulics. So the floor is yours, and we are looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you. €40 billion. This was the amount of losses of drought in 2022 in Europe. And as you all remember, this was the worst drought in the past 500 years. Romania was among the most affected countries. This is why I'm here today among so many amazing speakers. And I will share with you the drought risk assessment in Romania study, which was elaborated by a team of national and international experts. As our time is limited, I will focus my presentation on 3 points. Hazard characterization, impact assessment and risk assessment for water supply and sanitation sector and on other sectors. You will all have the presentation at the end for more details if needed. And now let's start. Those €40 billion represent 6% of the total losses caused by weather and climate-related events in Europe in the past 40 years. What is worse is the fact that the percentage of annual loss will increase with 2.5%, and the most affected regions of Europe will be in the south and in some areas of Central and Eastern Europe. What about the impact in Romania? In 2022, all over the news, we could see affected crops, dried lakes, like the one in the left corner, which was used for water supply and sanitation of the neighboring communities. We know about restrictions on Danube River due to low level of water. The hydroelectricity production as well
encounter reductions, and what is worse is that the protected areas were as well impacted. This is the context of our study. Among the main objectives of our study are the assessment of the impact and of the risk in Romania. And with this study, we are contributing to the second pillar of the integrated drought risk management. And we hope that we lay the foundation for future analytical work and interventions in drought management. How did we manage to do it? We used a DORA methodology, which is focused on the complex correlation between the risk factors, hazard, exposure, vulnerability, and its outcomes. What is important is the fact that based on our assessment of the impact, the European Drought Risk Atlas was improved in detail. In our assessment of the risk, we received support from the JASA Institute. Of course, that a complex set of data was used for this assessment with different spatial and temporal resolution, but more details you will find on this slide. And now, let's go to my first one. Hydrometeorological drought hazard characterization. As usual, drought is associated with the lack of precipitation. We started our assessment with SPI, which is the standard precipitation index, and we calculated it for a period of 12 months to characterize the medium conditions of drought, and for a period of 48 months to characterize the long-term conditions. What we notice is the rainfall drought hit Romania unequally. And as we encounter positive values for SPI, we assess the second indicator, the SPEI, standard precipitation evapotranspiration indicator, which evaluates the water balance as the difference between the precipitation and evapotranspiration. This indicator was used to characterize the severity of drought. What we noticed is negative values in all this period of 10 years, and the conditions went drier and drier. The drought from 2022 deepened the drier conditions from before, and that's why for some systems the coping capacity was exceeded. Unfortunately, in the future, these drier conditions will not improve. Now, we will go to my second point for today. Drought impact assessment and risk for water supply and sanitation sector. Why we did it? Because in 2022, 220 localities in Romania faced water shortages, and we considered that population should be a priority. How we did it? We started with drought survey for ROC. Then we analyzed the benchmarking data. And finally, we had the detailed interviews with 14 ROCs and LOCs to better understand how they were impacted. It was interesting to find out that only in 2 cases we could correlate the lower values of the SPEI indicator with the increase of the operational cost for ROC in 2 regions of Romania, Buzău, Ialomița, and Old River Basin. Why this happens is because the ROCs are relying on different water sources, underground or surface water. On the other hand, they were impacted by drought in different periods of time, And of course, there are also other characteristics that are contributing to these uncertainties in our try to connect the increase of operational costs with the lower values of the SDI. Then we started with detailed interviews with the ROCs and blocks, and among the findings is the fact that most impacted are rural vulnerable areas, and here the demand of water increased by 3 times, and as well the unauthorized use of water for irrigation. As a result, as well the non-revenue water volumes increased. Another aspect that was noticed by the ROCs and blocks was the decrease in the water level compared to 2010. Other impact was the eutrophication in the reservoir. And for us was interesting to find out that ROCs and blocks don't have drought risk management plans. So this is a point of attention for the policymakers and for the managers of these operators. A complex of actions should be implemented in order to manage the drought risk, especially for small operators, starting with investments, reducing the non-revenue water volumes, and as well better preparedness for climate-related risks. The risk was calculated as relative average annual loss for the present conditions and for the future conditions. What we have noticed is that the annual average loss of water availability for water supply and sanitation sector is of about 3.5%, but is much more increased in the south part of Romania and in the eastern part of Romania. And what is important is the fact that here 55% of the population of Romania lives. And in the future conditions, this annual average loss of water availability will increase by 2 or 3 times, depending on the scenario. To conclude my second point, drought is not only affecting the small rural areas now, but in the future they will impact as well the ROCs and the LOCs, and they need to be prepared. Small operators will need more financial and technical support to assess and to manage the risk. And above all, drought risk needs to be integrated in all strategic and operational planning. Going to my first point, the drought risk on other sectors. We assessed as well irrigation, but I think this is the draft presentation. So we assessed the risk for agriculture. What we noticed was the fact that the winter crops were most affected compared with the autumn crops, and the future and the present and climate and the future risk will affect especially the cereals and the oil crops in a percentage of, let's say, 7% in the present, and this percentage of risk will increase by 2 or 3 times in the future. Regarding the hydroenergy production, in 2022, we encountered a reduction of the production with 15%, but the water availability for this sector will be reduced by almost 5% in current conditions of drought, and this risk will increase by 2 to 3 times in the future. Regarding navigation, we all remember that in 2022, on Romanian sector of Danube, we had almost 100 days of navigation restriction. This led to a reduction of the transport with almost 5%, and the average annual loss in goods loading in Romania is estimated of about 1.4% in present conditions, but this will increase in the future by 3 times. And now, since we found out about the drought characterization, about the impact and risk for water supply and sanitation sectors and on other sectors, many conclusions can be drawn and we can reflect on them. But the most important conclusion, and this is the reason we are all here, is the fact that water is important for us and we need to work together for its security in the future. Fighting drought is a major step forward. Thank you all for your time and attention.
Thank Elena for good time managing, and I can say that we can move forward to the next presentation. We will move from Romania to Germany because I would like to introduce Mr. Robert Greb, Dr. Robert Greb, who is the CEO of REWAG, Regensburger Energie- und Wasserversorgung Aktiengesellschaft und Kommanditgesellschaft. And we are looking forward to the presentation named Innovative Managing of Water Resources from a Supply Perspective, the example of the Regensburg Energie- und Wasserversorgung. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Jacob, for the kind introduction, and thank you for the invitation to speak to you. I give you a short overview about the company, but also about our measures that we have taken to face the challenges of climate change, and we will focus on flood, because we have found out that flood is our major danger. Well, picture from our operations, gas production control. Here was a glance what the company is doing and what's the magnitude of our activities. We are located in Regensburg, and we serve the area. That means we are the utility of Regensburg with power, gas, drinking water, and heat. No wastewater. That I have to tell that differs from other countries that's separated the drinking which we consider water activities. We are about 500 colleagues and have it from over about 5 million a year. Yeah, you see some figures about our customers. Yeah, we are owned by the city of Regensburg, and we have the majority of the Bayernwerk. Bayernwerk that belongs to the group of E.ON. That's the major in Europe. Yeah, and that's how we work. Here you see a picture from our area. You see it differs. We do not have a unique area. We have some areas where we only have the concessions for the grid of electricity or the water. Only in Regensburg, everything in the surroundings it's partly splitted. Just a few words to Regensburg. Regensburg, it's 1 hour drive north from Munich. We are a lovely city, medieval part, Roman bridge, old one, the strong industrial base, automotive and machinery, and about 200,000 inhabitants in the city. And we see also the length of the kilometers of our activities in the grid. We always do both. We sell power, gas, water, but we also operate the grids. And you see 4,000 kilometers electricity and about 1,000 kilometers water grid. And this also shows the attention that we in the moment that we have to pay. We are strongly focused on the electrical grid. And I was happy. I started in Regensburg 1 year ago, and I have seen that we are already very advanced in implementing our water strategy. That means that we can now focus on the electricity, because just few words, because belongs everything together with our people needs, water, electricity. We have very ambitious goals, political goals to decarbonize everything, and will be electric everything. Cars, the heating pumps, small, big ones, and also we have a huge increase in photovoltaic, also in the domestic field. And that we have to focus as the electrical grid operator. Yeah, but back to the water. You see some pictures. We started the water activities about 150 years ago with a water extraction plant. So that's a small picture. And of course, we have two major sites where we extract the water. The bigger one that called Wallan, where we extract the water about 200 meters above. And then we have a smaller one that's more or less in the city center of Regensburg. Maybe we have to think that location, but that the operator is bank filtrate, that means 20 meters, and that should prevent the problem when we face floods in the future. But there's a couple of minutes. Okay. Yeah, the challenges we already have spoken today about clouds. It's of course it's also a problem in Germany, because we face significantly a fall in the groundwater levels and in the charging rates all over Germany. And the blue areas depend heavily on the groundwater for water supply. We think we are, let's say, fine this drought, hopefully, at least in the near future, because always a lot of groundwater comes from the north of the Alps, and in the moment there are not there's enough rain. So that, yeah, but maybe we have to rethink our strategy in the future when droughts will increase even more in the last years. Another topic is, I think, already also well known among you, that the pollution of the groundwater increasingly, especially nitrate. It's the development of our nature extraction facility. And of course, the reason is the expensive agriculture. We regularly fight with these agriculture people that they follow the restriction, but it's always a fight with some of them, not every, but was expensive agriculture as a topic. And we also partly involved because we operate biogas stations, and it also contributes to treatment effects. But yeah, you see there is a tendency that it goes down very slowly, takes very long retention time, 40 years, before the measures will come around. That's around 30, that means it takes a while to see some success. Yeah, but floods. I mean, Regensburg is situated on 3 rivers: the Naab, the Regen, and of course the Danube. And our water facilities are, well, one of them is a Benfeld Basin, and the other one is also close to the river. And that means our main focus is here, the water extraction, because when we face a major flood, just from Germany, then we have a problem with pure water supply, because our wells and extraction plants will be polluted from the flood, and then we have a big problem with the industry and of course the intelligent and with healthy tap water. And that's why 10 years ago there was a study in the local government area. They gave us a label, our security and water supply is limited. And that was the start for strategy for some measures that we now are close to finalize. You see, 10 years ago, always at one side of permissions and so on, and then to build the measures. The strategy to protect us or our facilities for floods have 3 elements, major elements. First of all is flood protection. That means we build some dams and walls around our facilities in order to protect it from the floods, but it only works for a certain limit. Then we have developed technical partnership and alliances with our neighboring water supply companies. They are a little bit higher from the altitude and they are more secure. And of course, we have developed only sources. We built them, which are not directly close to the river, which are from the altitude a little bit more above, and which are secure in the case of floods. And what's everything going on is the renewing of the infrastructure that we have. We think we 65 years we have to rebuild the next year. Here's an overview where we stand. You see in the majority of the measures we are close to finish next year or in 26. And that's a success story, at least for us, because we feel safe now in the case of floods. But it was a long time, and it cost us 70 million euros. Here's some examples. These are pictures from the facilities where we have built dams, protective walls, and that's sometimes not a big deal to build a dam. A big deal is to find a new retention area, because if we decrease the retention capacities in the region, then it's not good, because it's even more worse. And so we have to go to look for a new area. We have to buy it. We have to convince the owners and so on. And that's sometimes it's the major work that we have to do. It's not the brand, it's more the surroundings. Here, that's one of the interconnectors to the neighboring companies. And the idea is when we have a problem with floods or whatever, they can help us, but also vice versa, that we can help them when they have a problem. We have 2 collaborations. That's one of them. And the other one you see here, but you get an impression. It's about 10 kilometers. We need to connect them to that we are close to finish. Close to finish because we have to go under the Deutsche Bahn. It takes also a very long finishing process. That's right. Yeah, that's an example where we have improved our own facilities. We increase a well that belongs to us. It's now even with more capacity, and also we can mix the water with the effect that we can use the nitrate rate decrease. Because this well has a lower nitrate levels as the other facilities from us. That's an overview about the structure of our network in Regensburg and surroundings. You see there's always something to do now, but the level will increase because there was a expansion time in Regensburg in the 60s, 70s, 80s. This year, when it's safe, we focus on the 50s and the 50s. But it will increase, but it's an ongoing process that we have to renew our infrastructure in order to reduce the rate of the losses without the system. Here you see our middle term investment planning for water. We plan about 10 million a year. Next year is a little bit higher because of the integration of the flood protection. And yeah, that's the conclusion. We have invested in the flood protection 70 million, so it will when we are finished. And yeah, we are on a good way, but we have to take into account the drought situation. But flood was the first priority, and maybe just one remark yesterday, Carla, I guess, we have spoken about the connection from energy and water treatment and so on. And maybe that's a topic for the next years, because we are heavily engaged in looking for sources for renewable heat, because we have to get rid of natural gas in the next 20 years, and the sources of renewable energy for heating that's quite limited. And many of my colleagues and we discuss big heat pumps that we put into the DINAP river in order to extract heat. Maybe we come to a situation, I mean, in the moment we have to control that the DINAP not too hot. Everyone will expect heat in autumn and spring and so on, and in winter, then maybe we face a different situation. Because many of the cities along the DINAP they have plans to do this. We also think about to put a big heating pump into this floor of the wastewater treatment, the output of the wastewater treatment, because there's a temperature higher and more stable. But these are, let's say, developments that we face in Germany. They are close to the water treatment. Thank you.
I really want to thank Dr. Greb for the complex look to the Regensburg water supply system, let's say. I would be very happy if every water company would be so responsible and so active in this water place as your company is. And we can move on. You can see that everybody from this stage had been had the some presentation. We are missing one person, or not missing, because we will move on not only with the topic, which will be about the world study called "What the Future Has in Store: A New Paradigm for Water Storage," but we will move also on to the United States, and also we will move with the technical issues, because we have Mrs. Ellen Burke online. Many thanks for coming here and presenting, because the time shift is really not that good. Mrs. Ellen Burke is the global lead for the water resources at the World Bank. She holds a master's degree in international affairs from Princeton University, and also a Bachelor of Arts from Yale University. And I'm glad that we will see here the global study, which I already mentioned. So, floor is yours.
Thanks, everybody. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thanks so much for having me virtually. I'm really sorry that I couldn't be with you there in person. I am a longtime resident of the Danube River Basin, lived in Romania for a few years. So I'm definitely with you there in spirit, in wanting to help everybody with more productive use of the water resource. So I'm going to be talking a little bit today about water storage and how we can look at water storage a bit differently, given today's global challenges. Just want to make sure that you're seeing my slides on the screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. As water professionals, we're all aware that water storage has long been an important foundation for human civilization, for intensified agriculture enabled by water storage, enabled the development of the human race. Water storage for drinking water and domestic use allowed for concentrated cities to form. And we, of course, rely heavily on water storage today for services that underpin the economy, for electricity, for disaster risk management. But that being said, we're seeing globally a decrease in water storage. And this is both natural and built water storage. Using remote sensing, there's been a lot of work on changes in terrestrial water storage, and the map you see on the left shows a reduction in natural water storage in 23 of 36 areas of the world in the past 50 years. And at the same time, you were seeing a decline in built water storage per capita. This means that the rate of construction of built water storage is not keeping pace with the rate of population growth, and that existing storage is either aging out of its use or it's sedimenting up, so we're losing storage capacity. So net, we're losing water storage capacity globally, both natural and built. And at the same time, the demand for water storage is increasing. We have increased populations living in cities. We need increased food and agricultural production to meet growing populations and the changing demands of agriculture for biofuels and other purposes. And importantly, to meet the variability caused by climate change. So we're seeing this emerging water storage gap where our demand for storage is going up, but our actual supply of storage, the storage that's available to us, is decreasing. This graph comes from a joint EME and Global Water Partnership report that was worked on by Winston Yu, who I think is there with you in the room today. But it's important to note that we're seeing these global shifts. So what we did was in this report, What the Future Has in Store, look at how we can meet the changing nature of water storage, the increased demand, the decreased supply, especially given that we don't have a huge overabundance increase in resources to be able to meet this new supply gap. And so we came up with some basic principles. Some of these, you know, you say, okay, but this is hydrology 101. But in reality, these principles that I'm going to go through in a second aren't happening in practice. And so we wanted to look at how we can help our clients, our World Bank clients, undertake new approaches to water storage. So principle number one is recognizing and managing all types of storage, looking at natural storage types, hybrid storage types, and built storage types, recognizing that a lot of our natural ecosystems provide water storage, maybe with different levels of controllability and reliability than the built water storage. But wetlands, glaciers, forests, lakes, rivers provide water storage. There are many emerging hybrid storage types, right? People are starting to use irrigation canals for overnight storage or for flood storage. Paddy fields can be used for storage, where subsurface dams and sand dams are emerging in different areas. And then we have your traditional built storage types on the other end of the spectrum, tanks, small and large storage. The second principle is to take a systems approach. So instead of looking at storage sort of separately as individual projects, to start taking stock of where storage actually exists in the system, both natural and built. It's really surprising how, you know, there isn't one single entity in many governments that knows where the water storage for the country is, right? Some of it is under the Ministry of Agriculture's purview. Some of it is under Department of Water Resources. Some of it is private. One of the things we do in many of our projects that involve dam safety or overall storage management is helping countries put together an inventory of where their built storage is. And there are new emerging technologies using remote sensing from space, where we've helped clients find, you know, twice as much storage than is actually in their books that's built water storage. But it's also starting to take stock of where your natural water storage is. And the third principle is to stop thinking about storage as volume, but rather the services that are provided. So what are the services you're looking for from your storage? Is it increased water availability? Is it reduced flood impacts? Is it regulated water flow for generation of electricity or navigation? Once you have these services sort of outlined and your needs, your parameters around these services in terms of volume, controllability, reliability, different factors that we outline in the report, there's a process you can go through to start looking at how to maximize those services. And the fourth major principle is one of efficiency, and that's starting to use existing storage much more strategically, not only from a system scale, but looking at reoperating storage across uses, so that agricultural dams are used for flood control. I'll show you some examples of this, to rehabilitate existing storage. This includes natural and built storage, so rehabilitating catchments, as well as existing dams to increase storage capacity. Retrofitting dams so that they can serve additional purposes, adding floating solar to your dams, or adding additional spillway capacity to meet the needs either of the increased hydro variability of climate change, or to meet additional service users. When needed, raise new storage, but also engage in reform. A lot of reform is needed in order for us to be able to use storage across sectors, and to be able to really integrate green storage and allow the nature-based solutions that are needed to increase storage capacity. So here you have this call to action around the new paradigm for water storage that I just went through, to lead to more efficient and optimal use of storage so that we're able to get to the storage capacity we need. But I just want to highlight too that in doing this, the storage gap is not only about more storage, right? It's also about demand management. It's also looking at perceived storage needs to see if there are other solutions to this. So I want to just couch this and say that this approach exists within a wider integrated water resources management approach, that we're not advocating that storage is the solution to everything. And here is a sort of a schematic that I think helps many people look to see how the different forms of water storage combine into storage systems to provide storage services to meet the needs of the different storage users. So this looks complicated. Great. This is great in theory. How do we do this in practice? We've provided an integrated storage framework that can be used in a problem-driven systems approach to look at how you can reassess storage within a system across users in a participatory process to be able to get more from your storage. So it starts with a needs assessment. I think we've learned a lot in 20 years of implementation of IWRM, that what gets water users outside the water sector energized is the problems that they're facing and the need to solve those problems, rather than just a sort of generalized commitment to IWRM. So starting with the problems, what problems the different users are facing and what they actually need from water services, to understanding the system, and then defining scenarios and looking at ways in which you can add efficiency to the system along those lines that I outlined already. We have many case studies because we know that a lot of this is easy to say, but hard to put into practice. So the report features a number of case studies of how these principles are being implemented by different by different basins across the world, in terms of green and gray storage, conjunctive management, and optimization and governance and policy. I'll take you through a few of these today. And actually, since the report has come out, there's been so much progress that I'll even add to the case studies that are in the report. The first example is from California, where they've been implementing forecast-informed reservoir operations, where they had a multi-stakeholder consortium together with federal level employees, including Army Corps of Engineers, state employees, local authorities, including local irrigation districts, and then users, to look at how dams could be operated differently, to see that there's mandated flood space that needs to be kept in reservoirs. And if they know they're coming up to a dry year, to be able to use less of that flood space for water storage over time within the reservoir, so that they have greater water supply in dry years. And they started with one reservoir, and it was a long process, which we document across institutions, to come up with the research needed and an acceptable framework involving some of the best universities to look at seasonal forecasting and how that could be used to modify the reservoir operations. And this is now being implemented in many more reservoirs across the state, so that reservoir operators have a revised rule curve and are able to adjust the amount of flood storage they're keeping in the reservoirs, space, empty volume for floods, based on the seasonal forecast, whether it's expected to be a wet or dry year, thus getting more return from the existing infrastructure. Pressures in California are immense around water. They're experiencing some of the historic droughts, as well as really colossal flooding that they haven't experienced before. So and it's long-term droughts. Their groundwater is very overdrawn, much like the case that was just presented in Germany, but in a non-sustainable way. It's not just the drought that was causing the overuse, but unsustainable farming practices as well. So the state has launched what they're calling a new water supply strategy, but storage is really at the core of it. They're recognizing that given the increased hydro variability, much more storage is needed, that because of the regulatory framework, they are not able to build, it's very difficult to build new built storage. There's some in the pipeline. But they're looking at integrating green and gray storage, and they're taking flood managed aquifer recharge to scale. They're paying farmers in certain areas of the state to flood their fields so that the aquifers can get recharged to cope with these historic flood events. And at the same time are then making up some of their drought and overuse deficit in groundwater. So it's a really interesting case study in how these early pilots are now being taken to scale. Another example is Cape Town. A lot of people are familiar with the Cape Town drought situation and how they were on the brink of day zero. In doing so, they found out that their monitoring systems and their accounting system for the water in their reservoirs was off, that they thought they had more water than they actually did. And I think the Cape Town Chapter 2, sort of the rebound, is an amazing example in how they've looked to build resilience into the system, and how they are, they've gone from being this crisis case study into how a great case study in building long-term resilience in water systems. One aspect of that is now using aquifer recharge and reuse of water, and using natural storage capacity to be able to really change the amount of storage that they have at any given time. Another major factor here is their use of green water management. They are taking out invasive species in the catchment above the city to reduce water use by these invasive species. And this is a payment for environmental services mechanism. They have a water fund set up. But I think they are on the forefront of what many others are looking at in water management and looking at green and blue water management differently. The Nature Conservancy recently came out with a report looking at Sao Paulo, and it's called The Invisible Reservoir. And looking at if the city had engaged in catchment management differently and had been managing soil water storage and their wetlands, their upstream catchments differently during the last drought, it would have been the equivalent of 2 additional reservoirs of dry season water flows. So that we're coming from a world where remote sensing was a world of possibility, to where this is really being integrated in terms of green and blue water management, and we're able to sort of push the frontiers of what we think of as water storage and managing green and blue water differently, to get more water storage out of our natural systems. There's still a long way to go in terms of controllability and figuring out the reliability. It differs everywhere, even by catchment. But I really see this as the new frontier in water management. So with that, I'll stop. But just to say, a huge number of people inside and outside the bank worked on this report. And a big thank you to all of them, and to many of our clients who we were taking the lessons from. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Eileen, and again, thank you for joining us at such an early time. And thank you for all the presenters. We are on time. We did start a few minutes late, so I would like to just keep you here for another few minutes because these were really excellent presentations on drought and flood and how water storage can be in line with integrated water management. You really help us prepare. So if we have any questions from the audience.
Sonja Hofbauer, I'm a consultant for IAWD. I want to pick a bit of your wisdom in terms of the collaboration between the water sector and the agriculture sector. Or should we call it a struggle? In my country, in Austria, it's a struggle. The agriculture sector is a very powerful sector. And you've all given examples of our interrelation in terms of pollution, but also in terms of quantity. I think the water supply people here, we would all agree, water supply should take priority. How can we improve this? Do you have any good strategies? Eileen hinted on farmers being paid for flooding their fields to enhance infiltration. I think that's a very interesting idea, but what are other strategies to improve our collaboration between those two powerful sectors?
Thank you. So we'll take a couple of questions before we turn back over. Yeah.
My name is Alexandra. I'm working for Tobacco Technology. My question is actually for all the speakers. And first of all, thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. In your experience in the strategy and solution that you propose, how is the, let's say, the NRW, the non-revenue water management, particularly the real or physical losses, are taking it into account in this? Thank you.
One more?
I just wanted to ask about the cooperation between the water supply systems or companies with each other, because in the Czech Republic we have a big problem with it that there is no will to cooperate with the other cooperation with the other company because of the loss of the money of it. So I would like to how it is in your countries. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any more from the audience? Okay, great. So very relevant questions raised. Thank you. So first, the topic of working across sectors, working with water and agriculture, and how we can really bring those two together and so that we can manage the resource together instead of having these separate strategies. So I think all of these questions were open, so I will look to each of you. Elena, do you have anything to add? No, if not, we can move on to Robert or Eileen.
Yeah, the collaboration issue, yeah, it's always a topic, how to share the cost. In our case, we have seen a very few of the costs in the case, because we have actually initiated, and we have the problem. Yeah. But aside from the cost, from the investment, there are other factors that are important to realize that and yeah, I mean, we know each other. It's one area, and there are many contacts to each other, and that's why it wasn't such a problem. And since we have faced the next problem, of course, when we deliver water in the other direction. In the case of the merchants, we also get paid and we do some fees. But let's say in that case, it wasn't a problem.
Thank you. Eileen, did you want to add anything on this one, or should we move to the next question?
I could come in, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing. I could come in on the ag versus water supply question.
Yeah, thanks.
Do you want me to do that now?
Yes, please.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, having trouble hearing. So I think the us versus them dynamic between ag and other water users is real. For example, we're seeing in a number of countries in Latin America right now that there is a debate going on between downstream cities who are saying, hey, why am I having to pay for the desal plant, the expensive desal plant, when upstream agriculture is getting the groundwater for free or almost free, right? There are some equity issues here. And I think the more that us versus them dynamic can be controlled a little bit and focused more in terms of a common challenge, it's easier to find sort of cooperative solutions that work for all. I don't want to give the sort of the perception that in the California case, agriculture is getting a free ride. They're just getting paid for groundwater recharge because there are a number of other sort of regulations that were put on top of farmers in the same decade, right? In terms of groundwater recharge, additional responsibilities given to groundwater districts through the new groundwater law that was passed. So the agriculture is definitely taking its fair share of the hit. In addition to, well, some might not argue it's a fair share, but agriculture is definitely taking a share of the hit in terms of the pinch of water shortages. But there are incentives piled on top, you know, like the payment for flood MAR. So it's really looking at how to align all of the interests and look for, you know, graduated incentive payments to get everybody sort of not whole, but okay with where they are in meeting the shared challenge.
Thanks, Eileen.
Okay, so I'm getting messages on my phone that it is time to move on, but fortunately, that last question was on non-revenue water, and that's the topic of the next session. So we will dig into that deeper. So just one more round of applause for our presenters.